Colonel Robert's fist crashed onto the oak table, the plates rattling as his voice tore through the air like a battlefield command. "You're disgraceful, Harper. Your sister outshines you in every single way." The entire dining room froze. Knives and forks hovered in the air. Wine rippled in trembling glasses. Eyes darted nervously between faces, each relative unsure if they were supposed to keep watching or pretend not to hear. My mother, Evelyn, inhaled sharply, her hands clutching the edge of her chair as though bracing for impact. My cousin fidgeted, shifting uncomfortably. And then there was Claire, my sister, leaning back with that smug grin, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction, as if she had been waiting for this exact explosion. I didn't break down. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, a sharp laugh slipped from my lips, cold and controlled, like I was still in uniform standing at parade rest. "Perfect," I said flatly, locking eyes with Robert. "Then she can cover her own bills because I won't be footing them anymore." The silence that followed was suffocating. His face darkened crimson, veins pulsing at his temple. He shoved his chair back so violently it screeched against the floor and jabbed a finger at me, not like I was his daughter, but like I was an enemy combatant. "Get out," he roared. It was supposed to be Evelyn's birthday dinner. Instead, it became the night I finally stopped letting them chain me down. When I first stepped into the house earlier that evening, I had braced myself for the tension that always hung in the air like smoke. But I told myself I could take it, for her. She deserved one night of peace, one night without having to patch together our broken family. The air was filled with roasted chicken, garlic bread, and spices that used to mean comfort. Evelyn greeted me at the door with a small, weary smile, her warmth easing the weight in my chest for just a second. For a fleeting moment I almost believed we might actually have a normal meal. The table was carefully set, candles glowing, polished dishes shining under the light. My cousins laughed. My aunts whispered gossip. Glasses clinked together in quiet celebration. Evelyn radiated happiness that night, her smile bright as she soaked up the rare attention aimed at her for once. I reminded myself this dinner is for her, not for Claire. But in our family, peace never lasted. It was always a fragile ceasefire doomed to break. As plates were passed around, Robert slid seamlessly into his usual role, turning the spotlight back on Claire before the first bite was even finished. His voice carried across the table like a commander briefing his troops. "She's excelling at university," he declared, waving his fork like a medal. "Straight A's, balancing work, flawless in every way." I forced a polite smile and chewed mechanically, each word landing heavy in my stomach like lead weights. Claire ducked her head as if embarrassed, but I caught the triumphant glimmer in her eyes. The rest of the table sat in silence, hanging on Robert's every word as though it were scripture. Evelyn's glance flicked toward me, full of quiet apology, but it did little to ease the sting. I took a sip of wine, hoping to dull the edge, but the words pressed on. "She's destined for greatness. She's everything a father could ask for." It wasn't Claire I despised, it was the erasure that followed her. No matter the occasion, no matter who was supposed to be honored, the night always turned into her coronation. Even on Evelyn's birthday. I swallowed hard, promising myself not to ruin the evening. But then Robert's eyes, sharp as rifle sights, locked onto me and everything shifted. "Harper," he said, his tone loaded with expectation. "Are you giving Claire enough help?" My fork froze midair. Enough help? 4 months I'd been covering her rent, groceries, her phone bill, even bailing her out when she overspent. Before I could form words, Robert pivoted toward Claire, pressing like a prosecutor working a case. "Does your sister help you?" Claire tilted her head, feigning thoughtfulness just long enough to draw every gaze. Then she smiled, sweet, syrupy, but I saw the calculation beneath. "She does," she admitted softly. "But there's something I've been meaning to ask." My stomach knotted. I already knew what was coming. "Go on, Claire," Robert urged, leaning forward like he was preparing to crown her. Her gaze locked on mine, voice dripping with false innocence. "I need a car, Harper. It would make school and work so much easier." The room fell into tense silence. Forks tapped softly against plates. All eyes turned to me. "A car," I repeated, deliberately setting down my fork. She nodded eagerly. "Just something reliable enough to keep up with my schedule." I turned to Robert, disbelief written across my face. "If she needs a car, why don't you buy it?" The air thickened instantly, heavy as storm clouds before a strike. Robert's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing into blades. "You're telling me you won't do that for your sister?" His voice thundered. My pulse quickened, but I kept my tone even. "I already pay her rent. If she wants a car, that's her responsibility." That was the breaking point. His voice exploded, booming like cannon fire, each word sharper than the last. "Claire has potential. She's going places. She deserves every bit of support. And you can't even manage this one thing." The room collapsed into silence. My cousins kept their eyes fixed on their plates, fidgeting nervously, no one daring to glance in my direction. Claire lowered her head as if embarrassed, but the ghost of a smirk tugged at her lips. She had wanted this outcome from the start. Then Robert dealt the final strike, his words as brutal as any order barked on a parade ground. "She's better than you, Harper. Always has been. Always will be." A laugh slipped out of me, cold, sharp, and nothing like my usual voice. "Perfect," I said, locking eyes with him. "Then she can start paying her own rent." His face turned crimson, veins standing out across his temples. He shoved his chair back, the screech of wood against tile cutting through the air like a scream. "Get out," he thundered, finger stabbing toward the door as though I were an enemy soldier trespassing on his ground. "If you're too selfish, you don't belong here." The weight of the room pressed down. Evelyn gasped into her hand, her eyes wide and brimming. My aunts turned away, pretending not to witness the collapse. My cousins whispered nervously to each other. Claire stayed silent, and that silence roared louder than his voice. It was the silence of victory. I rose slowly, steadying my breathing, my expression calm, controlled, the way years in uniform had trained me to be under fire. "Happy birthday, Mom," I said softly, giving Evelyn the only gift I could that night. Then I turned and walked upstairs to my old room, the one frozen in time like a museum of who I used to be. I shut the door, leaned against it, and listened to the chaos bleed upward through the walls. Evelyn pleading with Robert to calm down, my father's rage shaking the house, and Claire's silence echoing like artillery fire. I sat on the edge of my childhood bed, phone in hand, scrolling mindlessly as ice settled into my veins. This wasn't new. Robert had always torn me down while raising Claire higher, but doing it on Evelyn's birthday in front of every relative, that was the final cut. I wasn't going to plead for respect anymore. I wasn't going to keep being their ATM, their scapegoat, their afterthought. If Robert wanted me out, then I'd go, but I wouldn't go quietly. Downstairs, forced laughter picked up again, thin and brittle, the sound of people desperate to smooth over what had just erupted. Plates clinked, glasses knocked together, forks scraped. That was my family's specialty. Bury the wreckage, polish the surface, keep Claire shining at the center. But I was finished playing my part. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling but steady enough to unlock the banking app Robert had pressured me into linking years ago. He'd called it a safety net, a family emergency account. In truth, it had become Claire's lifeline, swallowing my paychecks for her rent, her groceries, her endless whims. The number on the screen hollowed me out. Thousands. Gone. I scrolled through the transactions, each line a blade. Cash withdrawals, tuition transfers, bills I'd never approved. Not just Claire. Robert's fingerprints were there too. My own father had been draining me dry, and then had the audacity to call me selfish. The anger that rose inside wasn't fire. It was ice. Controlled. The kind of cold fury that wins wars. Controlled. Precise. I shifted every remaining dollar out of that joint account into my personal one, clicked close account, and felt something in my chest loosen like a knot finally cut free. The leash was gone. Claire's next rent payment? Not my problem anymore. Let Robert play savior. By sunrise, the storm hit. My phone buzzed nonstop, Claire's name flashing first. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Harper, what the hell?" she shrieked, her voice ragged. "You drained the account. I can't pay rent now." I leaned back, my voice flat, calm, like I was issuing orders. "Dad says you're better than me. Then prove it. Figure it out." "You're ruining my life," she screamed. "No," I replied, cutting her clean. "You and Dad already did that." I ended the call, her rage still crackling in my ear like static. A knock followed soon after. Evelyn stood in the doorway, wrapped in a worn robe, her face carved with sleepless lines. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. I stepped aside and she sank onto my bed. Your father didn't mean it last night, she whispered, rubbing her temples. He just gets passionate when it comes to Claire. I laughed, bitter and sharp. Passionate? He humiliated me in front of everyone. He told me to get out. You know how he is, she said, shoulders slumping. Just fix this, Harper. For the family. Fix what? I snapped. I've been paying Claire's bills for years. I'm done. Her eyes widened, panic flashing. Harper, don't do anything reckless. I didn't respond. She slipped out quietly, the click of the door sealing me back in silence. The rest of the day was a barrage of messages from Claire. I need rent. What's wrong with you? Answer me. I finally typed back. Ask Dad. He's got you. Then I muted her number. By evening, Robert called. His voice was clipped, seething. You closed the account. It was my money, I said flatly. You and Claire bled me long enough. You're leaving your sister homeless, he spat. She's better than me, remember? She'll survive. Dead silence. Then the line went cold. But I knew Robert. His words were never idle. He was a storm warning I'd heard my entire life. 2 mornings later, I pulled into their driveway and froze. My old sedan, the one I'd bought at 17 with scraped-together paychecks from late-night shifts, sat there with a neon for sale sign slapped across the windshield. My first taste of freedom reduced to a pawn. I stormed inside. Evelyn nearly dropped the dish in her hands. Where's Dad? Her eyes flickered. He's out. Why? I pointed toward the driveway. He's selling my car. She wrung her hands. You haven't driven it in years. He thought. It's mine, I snapped. Not his to touch. I marched back out, ripped the sign off, and drove that rattling car straight to my apartment. The engine groaned with age, but to me it roared like victory. Minutes later, Robert's name lit my phone. His voice was smug. Changed your mind. You don't get to sell what's mine, I said. He chuckled, low and dark. You left it here. That makes it mine to deal with. You're finished in this family, Harper. Fine, I answered coldly. Then let's see how you handle Claire without me. I hung up, rage simmering but focused, resolve solidifying like steel. That night, I spread years of bank statements across my kitchen table like a battlefield map. Line after line told the truth I'd suspected. Robert hadn't just been covering Claire's expenses. He'd been bleeding me dry for utilities, tuition, and his own cash withdrawals. I wasn't their daughter, I was their supply line. The final ambush came days later. I unlocked my apartment door after a shift and froze. The place had been gutted. My TV gone. Laptop missing. Closet ransacked. Even the watch collection I'd built piece by piece overseas vanished. No broken lock. No forced entry. Only 2 people had keys. Evelyn and Robert. My blood ran cold then hot. I called him, shaking. Where's my stuff? He sounded almost smug. What are you talking about? You robbed me for Claire. Family comes first, he said flatly like it was doctrine. You stole from me, I hissed. You'd understand if you weren't so selfish. I forced my voice calm, steady, soldier-trained. You just made a mistake, Dad. And I hung up. By dawn, I was in a lawyer's office, laying it all out like evidence before a tribunal. Photos, receipts, bank records, proof every item was mine. She tapped her pen and said words that shifted the ground beneath me. This is theft. You can press charges. At minimum, threaten him. He'll cave. For the first time in years, the power tilted back in my direction. That night I called Robert. Pressed record. I spoke to a lawyer, I said. Return my property or I file charges. He laughed, but I heard the crack in his tone. You jail your own father? Try me, I replied coldly. I have your confession on tape. Silence. Then his voice faltered. Fine. I'll get the money. 3 days later my account lit up. Every cent wired back. No excuses. No apology. I'd won, but I was done. I sold my apartment, accepted a new post out of state, and packed what little was left. The new place was small but quiet. No calls. No guilt trips. Just clean air and silence, freedom. Months rolled by before Evelyn's number flashed on my phone. Harper, she whispered. It's Claire. She's pregnant. The father's gone. She has nothing. We need you. I leaned back, nearly laughing. She's better than me, remember? She'll figure it out. Weeks later, Claire emailed me herself. I'm sorry, Harper. Single motherhood is harder than I thought. Dad's broke. Please help us. I marked it spam and closed my laptop. They had drained me, mocked me, stolen from me. Now they could learn survival without me. For the first time, I wasn't Harper the wallet. Not Harper the forgotten daughter. Not Harper the scapegoat. I was Harper, free, untethered, and finally whole. So tell me, was I wrong to cut them off and fight back? Or was this the only way to take my life back? And if you think this story was powerful, the next one will shake you even harder. Subscribe now before you miss it. And if this hit a nerve, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it too.